Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Truro Cathedral. A welcome also to those who I know are joining us on the live stream and to those who may watch this ceremony later on YouTube. Welcome to you all to this act of commemoration on Holocaust Memorial Day 2022. If you are a visitor in the cathedral at the moment, do please feel free to join us or to simply watch the short commemoration quietly from a seat. Year by year, the 27th of January is kept as Holocaust Memorial Day to mark the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp on this day in 1945. The anniversary has been kept in the UK since 2001 to commemorate the 6 million lives lost during the Nazi genocide of the Second World War. The majority of those lives were, of course, Jewish, and we stand today with those of the Jewish faith who still mourn the loss of family and friends. But today we recall also that under the Nazi regime, many other groups of people were persecuted: LGBTQ+ groups, people with disabilities, Romani people, and people of colour and others. We remember today that sadly genocide has occurred in the world many times since 1945 in Rwanda and Cambodia, Myanmar, South Sudan, Iraq, and elsewhere. Some observers indeed have commented that it continues today for the Uyghur people in northern China. Persecution of a singled-out minority by a more powerful majority has sadly been a feature of the whole of human history, and today we both commemorate those whose lives have been taken through such persecution and stand in solidarity with those who still suffer such oppression today. Before we hear from the groups who are represented here today and light our commemorative candles, we're going to watch 3 very short videos which explain something of the background of the Holocaust and remind us of the way that these terrible wrongs continue to resonate through people's lives today. We are grateful to the students from Falmouth University for enabling us to use this material today.
My name is Cynthia Clare Hollingsworth, and I live in Carvis Bay, just outside St Ives. I'm a member of Kehilat Kurno, the Jewish community of Cornwall, and I'm privileged to be involved with Holocaust education for schools in Cornwall, working with Cornwall Faith Forum, Falmouth University, and SACRE. My mother, Blanca Engelberg, and her sister Clara were sole survivors of the Holocaust from a family of over 200. There are very few Holocaust survivors left to tell what really happened. And at the same time, there are people who deny the Holocaust ever happened. We can see that persecution, torture, and brutality still take place, such as in the recent genocides in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, and Darfur, and the human rights abuses committed by the government of China against Uyghur Muslims. I truly believe that it is through education that we can combat hatred, and that by sharing my mother's story, people can learn valuable lessons of resilience, compassion, tolerance, respect, and kindness to prevent anything like the Holocaust ever happening again. These lessons give us hope for a better future. My mother grew up in Tarnów, a city in southeastern Poland, approximately 45 miles east of Krakow. Before the outbreak of World War II, there were over 25,000 Jews in Tarnów, nearly half the city's total population. But Jewish life changed forever when on 8th of September 1939, the German army entered Tarnów and began terrorizing the Jewish population. Mummy's family knew that they were going to be evicted from their home and would have to leave all their possessions behind. So in order to save the family's precious Sabbath candlesticks, Mummy's family buried them in their garden. This year's theme for Holocaust Memorial Day is One Day. For one day in 1948, Mummy bravely returned to Tarnów to retrieve those Sabbath candlesticks. The following animation tells her story and was created by students on the animation course at Falmouth University. The animation which will follow was prepared by last year's students on the same course and continues Mummy's story in the camps through to her arrival in England. With very special thanks to the students of Falmouth University who produced these animations, many of whom are with us today, and to their lecturer, Kathy Nichols, and to Rita Stephen from Cornwall Faith Forum.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lechadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Zostawcie mnie! Nic nie zrobiłem! Panowie! Co robicie?
ברוך אתה, אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו להדליק נר של שבת.
Only my mother Blanca and her younger sister Clara survived the Holocaust out of a family of 200. The conditions in the concentration camps were inhumane, with limited food rations, long rows of holes as toilets, wooden bunks to sleep on, and a thin uniform to wear. One day, the guards were looking for a translator. Clara pushed my mother to volunteer. Mummy received warmer clothes and more rations and shared them with other inmates. When Clara got sick, in a strange act of kindness, a female guard gave them medicine and supplies which helped Clara recover. Unfortunately, the guard was punished and killed for her act of humanity. As the war reached its final stages, Hitler issued an order to evacuate the camps. Somehow, my mother and her sister ended up in a group that were shipped away. They travelled first by train, then by boat. In a cruel twist of fate, the boat was bombed by the Allies, who believed the ship to be German troops. Thankfully, they survived the journey. Despite everything that happened, Mummy never had any bitterness and focused on giving my brother and I the happiest life possible while supporting my father. Mummy always strived to help others until the very end, and her story will live on.
Some candles, and the groups who are represented here will offer us some short reflections to reflect on what we have just seen and heard, and also on some of the ways in which that continues to resonate today. So I would like to invite, first of all, Jeremy and Maya from the Jewish community, Kahiliat Kerno, to come and light some candles and to reflect from us. If you're offering a reflection, I'd be glad if you could speak from the lectern.
A few years ago, Maccabee GB started the Yellow Candle Project, aiming to remember individuals who died in the Holocaust by naming candles after them. Our community placed an order for about 50 candles, and by chance, all of them that we have so far used over the last 2 years have been named after children. It is particularly important to name the victims, since names were one of the things the Nazis stole from their victims, replacing them, as we saw in one of the animations, with numbers in order to dehumanize them. So we, in lighting these candles, are giving names back to the dead, and in a small way, giving them back their humanity. At the same time, it is important to remember not only the deaths of the victims of the Shoah, but also their lives. The 6 million Jews who died, plus the many other victims of the Nazis, were living people, sharing in all the complexities of the societies and cultures they lived in, the history and traditions they inherited and also contributed to. Unfortunately, we know so little of many of the individual children who died, but we can be reasonably sure that, like all children the world over, they would have been full of life, love, and hope. We're going to light 6 candles, each one for a particular individual human being, and at the same time representing 1 million other victims of the Holocaust. Today we mourn how our lives were stolen from you. We mourn what you were destined to become: writers, scientists, politicians and composers, parents, teachers, agitators, defenders, champions of our people. We remember you. We honor your lives and your good deeds. We sanctify your good names. We light a candle and we bless your memory. The first candle we're going to light is for Ferenc Wertheimer of Jacobson in eastern Hungary. Born in 1937, died in 1944, aged 7 years. The second candle is for Niusza Albesik of Lublin, Poland. Born in 1934, died 1942 in Majdanek, aged 8. The third candle is for Szymon Ziga of Izbika Kuźwacha in central Poland. Born in 1933, died at Chemo, age 7. And the fourth candle is for Josie Gerwick of Horingrod, which at that time was in Poland, is now in Ukraine. Born 1935, died age 7. The fifth candle is for Hanna Pfeffer of Lubczy, a village in central Poland. She was born in 1934 and died aged 8 at Droziszke. And the last sixth candle is for Basia Okrągły of Lodz in Poland, who was born in 1936 and died in 1942 in Auschwitz, aged 8. I'm now going to ask my wife to read a prayer, which will then be followed by a prayer of mourning for the dead, which will be read by the life president of our community, mine.
Eli, Eli, selo yigamel leolam, hako rahayam, rush selaha mayim, berek hasamayim, tiflat ha-adam. O God, my God, I pray that these things never end, the sand and the sea, the rush of water, the crash of the heavens, it human prayer.
Thank you. And Harvey, would you like to come up now? Thank you.
El molei רחמים שוכן, במרומים המצי מנוחה, נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות, קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר קויה, מזהירים לנשמות שישי, מיליון אחינו ואהבותינו שמתו על קדוש השם, ינוחו בשלום ובשלום שלא ידעו ויהיהם. אנו בעל הרחמים, הסתירם בסתר כנפיך, יעלמים וצרוך החיים את נשמתם. אדוני הוא נהילתם, וינהו בשלום על משכבו ונאמם. Amen. God, full of compassion, whose presence is over us, may the souls of our 6 million dead who have gone to their everlasting home with the holy and pure on high, who shine as the lights of heaven, find the safety and rest denied them on earth beneath the shelter of your presence. Source of mercy, cover them in the shelter of your wings forever, and bind their souls into the gathering of life. It is God who is their heritage. May they be at peace in their place of rest. Amen.
Now I'd like to invite Right Reverend Hugh Nelson, who is the Bishop of St. Germans, to light a candle and to offer us a reflection on behalf of the Christian people in Cornwall.
For a year now, since this day last year when we joined together online and not in person, I've been following a Twitter account. It's the Twitter account of the Auschwitz Museum. And they offer almost every day, in amongst the banalities of the tweets that scroll underneath my finger, a picture of one of the victims, those murdered in Auschwitz, together with the biographical details that are known. And they are often scanty, but beautiful. A date here or there, a profession, perhaps whether they were a mother or a father, a grandparent or a child, and the picture of the person. And their eyes look out across the years at me, and I try, in this strange, distracted world we live in, to pay attention to them. And so I light my candle for myself on behalf of the Church, and I do so in memory of all those who died and who look out across the generations to us even today, reminding us of the horrors that humanity is capable of. And I light the candle also to stand in solidarity with those who even today are suffering from persecution and who are in danger for their lives. And I light the candle in commitment for myself, on behalf of the Church, to be ready always to stand up to those who face injustice and those who are victims of other people's hatred, and perhaps sometimes of my own too.
So I'd now like to invite Colonel Edward Bolitho to come and light his candle.
It's so important to spend time thinking about the horrors that have taken place in world history, both in the past and far more recently. We need to do so to remember, first of all, those who have suffered and died, but we also need to do so to think how we can hope to avoid it in the future. And we need to remember how incredibly fortunate we are to live in this country, in a constitutional monarchy, a democracy that has avoided these sorts of atrocities for hundreds of years, and a country that is renowned for its moderation and tolerance. But we must not be complacent. In a changing and complex world, there is no guarantee that this will continue forever. So we must do what we can to help. How? Well, I suggest by listening and seeking to understand views other than our own, by doing what we can to strengthen our communities, and by taking part in the democratic processes of our country. In these small ways, we can hope to keep extremism at bay. Thank you to the organisers of this event, and I light a candle in remembrance of those who died and in hope for the future.
Superintendent Arundale.
It started with words. We know this to be true of so many instances of persecution and genocide, not least Nazi Germany, Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, and Darfur. It started with words. It's important to recognise the link between this statement and the escalation of the stages of hate, discrimination, and dehumanisation. Today brings us together against all forms of hate, abuse, and persecution. Hate strikes against our values and the values of the police service. It challenges humanity, religions, freedom, and equality. Today we honour the strength and memory, bravery of those that died. We honour them with a commitment to challenge these words. We honour them with a zero tolerance to hate crime and a commitment to foster and promote a tolerant and kind society. I light the candle in their memory and to honour that commitment.
And I invite Mayor of Truro, Steve Webb, to come and light a candle on behalf of the people of Truro.
Yeah, I'd like to share a moment that symbolises infinite possibilities. May 1944, two sisters arrived in Auschwitz, Magda and Edith. Their first experiences were losing both parents, although they did not know what the line selection meant at the time. Sister or mother, Edith was asked. Mother, because that's what she needed at the time. It was the wrong choice, and it sealed her mum's fate. A little while later, they had both been stripped, had their hair removed, and humiliated in the most undignified way. They both sat in a barren barracks of some sort, with a window facing the chimneys. As the reality of what the smoke meant sunk in, Magda couldn't look away. And I quote, Magda finally speaks to me. How do I look, she asks. Tell me the truth. The truth. She looks like a mangy dog, a naked stranger. I can't tell her this, of course, but any lie would hurt too. And so much I find it impossible to answer, a truth that doesn't wound. I gaze into her fierce blue, the fierce blue of her eyes, and think that even for her to ask that question, how do I look, is the bravest thing I'd ever heard. There weren't mirrors here. She was asking me to help her find and face herself. And so I tell her the one true thing that's mine to say. Your eyes, my sister. They're so beautiful. I never noticed them when they were covered up with all that hair. It's the first time that I see that we have a choice to pay attention to what we've lost or pay attention to what we still have. Thank you, she whispers. That's from the book, The Choice by Edith Eger. In any given moment, there's a possibility of violence, even here and now. In any moment, there's a possibility of kindness, even then, in those circumstances. They made the unbearable choices, relentless moment after moment, day after day, week after week, some of them month and year after year. In any given moment, you choose from the infinite well of possibilities. For you, for the person sat next to you, and for everybody else. It may have started with them, they've shown us the way. It's now down to you, to us, to choose compassion, understanding, acceptance, and love. And I light this candle for those two sisters and their parents and everybody else that died in Auschwitz.
Chris Jordan, would you like to come from Cornwall People First?
Doing my usual, I found something to read. Completion by Vera Schufeld, MBE. Vera Schufeld was born in Czechoslovakia and came to the UK on kindergarten transport when she was just 9 years old. She now shares her experiences with people across the UK. A lifetime ago, on Cloutover Station, sitting on a swing, hearing the odd joke, your Auntie Waldorf and Uncle Alf are coming, small uncle and tall aunt arriving, bringing amazing gifts from distant Berlin, a round doll's house with street lights at its centre, a huge rocking horse with thick mane and proud tail, a red car to sit in, to pedal and drive, sitting on a sad train full of children, parents last seen shut off behind barriers, suddenly in the corridor, Uncle Rudolph and Alf riding through Germany from border to border, magically familiar, laughing and joking, Their presence here, the best gift of all. Yesterday, making a long postponed phone call, giving names, date of births, last known addresses. Here on 2nd of March 1943, Uncle Rudolph and Aunt S deported to Auschwitz. No one left to remember them, just me, finally able to mourn. As you gather by that poem, the lady lost all her family in the Holocaust. I'm also going to light the candle on behalf of people with learning disabilities who perished in the Holocaust.
Memuna and Kudzia from Cornwall Faith Forum, would you like to come and light your candle?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, ever merciful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May the peace and blessings of Allah be on all of you. I pray that Almighty God, who is the source of all light, both physical and spiritual, will illumine our hearts and let us look back and learn from the mistakes of the past. But let us look forward and hope that through compassion and mercy, through kindness and love, our hearts, our homes, our communities and our world may be illuminated with the light of the knowledge of God. Thank you.
Matthew Kenworthy Gomez from Cornwall Pride, would you like to come and light your candle, please?
Standing here to recognise those people that have passed away against discrimination and all hate, the most important thing to recognise is we have to recognise that from the accounts of the people that were there, that have survived and didn't survive. So what I'd like to do is share some accounts from Pierre Seal. So on a faithful day in May 1941, a Nazi-occupied Strasbourg 17-year-old, Pierre Seal, was summoned by the Gestapo. He was the beginning of a journey that would transport him from the safety of his innocence of his home to horrors of a concentration camp. For nearly 40 years, Seal kept his experiences secret in order to hide his homosexuality, but ultimately, haunted by his past and the silence of others, he decided to speak out, bearing witness to the aspects of the Holocaust rarely seen. Rather than going through his memoir, I just wanted to share the historical accounts that he shares. The Nazi hatred of homosexuality was quite racial. Homosexuality is a crime not against morality or religion, but against race. This is confirmed. The Jews were exterminated for being detrimental to the purity of the race. Homosexuals were for being detrimental to the reproduction of the race. Heinrich Himmler said in a speech, February 18th, 1937, "When we took power in 1933, we discovered the homosexual associations, they had 2 million members. This means that 7 or 8% of men are homosexual, and this does not change. We will simply mean that our nation will be wiped out by the contagious disease. In this vice," continues, "Germany without combating it will spell the end of Germany. The Third Reich proceeded to round up, arrest German homosexuals. They were shipped off to concentration camps. The number of homosexuals deported is estimated at 350,000. Very few of them survived. The victims have still not been recognized by official history. And that was the Encyclopedia Hecht, 1990. The homosexual is a man who is radically ill on a mental level. He is weak and acts cowardly in all decisive manners. The homosexual, likewise, lies in a sick way and believes that he says the homosexual is by nature easily intimidated. Also, Heinrich Himmler. The historian François Bedride notes, in the concentration camps, the gypsies and homosexuals were at the bottom of the camp hierarchy. They were forced to do the most degrading and the most arduous work. Thus, a gypsy woman whose entire family had been gassed was used to carry the dead. Together with other internees, she had to gather the corpse at the execution sites and carry them to the ditch, where the prisoners were often still alive, though barely. They were finished off with a bullet to the back of the neck. The accounts continue to go on. To recognize where we are today, we have to understand those atrocities and speak them out, however hard that may sound. I just want to be able to leave one last poem or statement from a friend, Stephen Hick. To deny hate is to enable hate. To not speak out when you witness hate is to enable hate. To indulge in hateful is to enable hate. To use hate as a personal weapon is hate. To use hate as a political tool is hate. To deny anything hateful or to enable hate in any way is repugnant. It invalidates any argument. It is destructive and immoral. We're lighting the candle for anyone that has been killed or harmed by hate.
Thank you to all of you for being here today. Thank you to all who have brought those powerful, powerful reflections to us all. And I'm just going to ask Bishop Hugh if he could offer us a final closing reflection for our ceremony today.
As we conclude our time together, I invite you in silence to call to mind the stories that we've heard, the voices, many of them from the past, that we have listened in on, the thoughts of our minds and the feelings and responses of our hearts. And as you do so, to make your own commitment to a world free from injustice, hatred, genocide, and all that disfigures our humanity. Thank you. Thank you for coming.